I think in 1952, we sent a signal to the cosmos, which is that we're very, very close to being in possession of root-level knowledge, to take a software metaphor. If there was something or someone there to hear us, they probably heard us as saying, we're on the verge of being able to come visit you. That's terrifying.
But the DC flyover occurred in July of 1952, and the first hydrogen bombs were tested later that year in November. So the timing is a bit off if Weinstein is attempting to draw an exact correlation. But what's not as well known is that at the time, a state-of-the-art plutonium and tritium production facility was being built at Savannah River Site in South Carolina. In July of 1952, it had just become operational, and it was the most secretive atomic site in the United States. In fact, a young nuclear engineer stationed there named John Anderson was required to attend a group event with 100 other engineers on site to celebrate the 150th anniversary of the founding of DuPont Company in 1802. Kinda weird, but hey, I guess that's what you celebrate while working on a nuclear site. Anderson and his colleagues were quickly overtaken by a green glowing object, angular in size, darting back and forth erratically at high speeds and altitudes, with phenomenal maneuverability. We now know that the date of this event was likely July 19, 1952, the peak day of sightings for the 1952 DC flyover. Were the UFOs perhaps trying to send a message to our federal government? And what was being detected by the best American telescopes at the time? Well, I've spoken to an amazing Swedish astronomer named Beatrice Villarreal about just that.
So we were comparing these images from the early 50s to images as it looks today, and I was hoping to see this perfect sparkling star that you can find in multiple images that one day vanishes. And I had this image where you could see multiple stars appearing and vanishing, which is completely crazy. I got an idea of that one of the ways how one can also search for more such examples is by looking for those that are lying along a line or in a narrow band. And we had two such examples that were statistically significant. One is 5 objects on a narrow band, and it's from the 27th of July 1952. And then my colleague Enrique found these 3 stars that triple transient. This one is from the 19th of July 1952.
That's absolutely amazing. I mean, because in UFO lore, this Washington invasion or DC flyover where there were saucers all over DC at the time, and it was July of 1952, but it was specifically 2 weekends. It was the 19th and 20th, and it was the 26th and 27th. So I find that absolutely remarkable.
But Eric Weinstein may have still been right in another sense. There is actually a direct link between the hydrogen bomb blasts at the Marshall Islands and UFOs. The famous tests codenamed Operation Ivy and Operation Castle.
There was another major one called Project Castle or Operation Castle in the spring of '54. And I found sailors who were aboard various vessels who were describing very brief but clearly sightings of disc-shaped objects or spherical-shaped objects hovering over their ships.
In fact, the entry from the deck log of the USS Curtis, the ship that detonated the hydrogen bomb at Bikini Atoll, reads, "At 23:05, an unidentified luminous object passed over ship from bow to stern, yellowish orange in color, traveling at a high rate of speed and a low altitude."
I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
The connection between UFOs and nuclear was known since the beginning of American government atomic programs. We now know, due to verified declassified documents, that on May 5, 1949, after multiple sightings at Killeen Base at Camp Hood, Texas, which stored America's largest nuclear stockpile to date, that an emergency meeting was held. The meeting included the Air Force's Office of Special Investigations, the Office of Naval Intelligence, Army counterintelligence, and the FBI. They were called in to discuss the sudden, ubiquitous appearance of UFOs across nuclear bases in the US. Also that year, a now public FBI memo was sent to Director J. Edgar Hoover, reporting flying discs, flying saucers, and balls of fire, quote-unquote, considered top secret by intelligence officers of both the Army and Air Force. The memo goes on to discuss frequent sightings at Los Alamos, the headquarters of the Manhattan Project.
There's some people I'm colleagues with that, like, their grandparents were actually, the UFO report people on the Manhattan Project. And I remember being told that. I'm like, really? Holy crap, that's crazy. There's like a whole other side of the Manhattan Project.
The connection between UFOs and nuclear was known since the beginning of American government atomic programs. And UFOs are classified with the same protocols governing American atomic secrets.
If something is not a nuke, but it has radiological energy coming off it, alpha, beta decay, whatever.
Same secrecy.
Same secrecy.
In a 1952 Look magazine article titled "The Hunt for the Flying Saucer," Chief UFO investigator for the Air Force, Captain Edward J. Ruppelt, is quoted saying, "Many of the sightings reported had originated at one atomic weapons-related site or another, all around the country."
And Ruppelt is on record in the article saying that we are aware of 63 separate incidents of UFOs being sighted at nuclear weapons facilities.
In fact, the rumors of UFOs at Los Alamos and other nuclear sites were so widespread that Eleanor Roosevelt wrote to Oppenheimer inquiring about them. Responding with a letter that's been fully verified and archived in the Library of Congress, Oppenheimer wrote back reassuring the former First Lady that these were just rumors. But from a 1971 Australian intelligence document written by the head of their nuclear division, Harry Turner, Oppenheimer was deeply involved in exotic anti-gravity research. So was Oppenheimer playing dumb?
Would Oppenheimer have been told? The Manhattan Project would have custody of it, and then it would go into the Atomic Energy Commission, and then it would go into the Department of Energy, which has its own line of clearances. And that's why I can't find, among the people I know who have clearances above top secret, they've never heard of this.
Yeah.
They've never heard of this because you can be in the Pentagon with a top secret clearance, but if you're not briefed on the atomic secrets, you wouldn't get the clearances that you needed to do to open up that thing.
Fast forward to 1964. We're on Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. A classified program is taking place called Atlas, testing dummy nuclear warheads being launched from intercontinental ballistic missiles. A photo instrumentation specialist, Lieutenant Bob Jacobs, was tasked with capturing the launch of 2 missiles from 100 miles north of Vandenberg at Big Sur.
A giant 18-wheel truck came trucking up this Forest Service road and brought this enormous catadioptric telescope with a focal length of about 2,000 inches. The normal length on a 35mm camera is 2 inches, so you can imagine how big the image would be in a 2,000-inch lens. So I said, wow, this is neat. And the guy who had built this thing was named Walt Manning, Dr. Walt Manning at Boston University. At any rate, we got the telescope all set up and we were ready to go, and Major Mansman called and he said, tomorrow morning at 0600, get ready because we're launching an Atlas missile and we want you to photograph that with the big BU telescope. I went, okay. So at 0600, we were up and ready to go, and an Atlas missile popped up through the ground fog that was covering the whole coastline all the way down there. It was beautiful. We took the film back to Vandenberg, where it was processed, and a day later, I got a call from Major Mansman. He said, come up to my office. So I went to his office, and he said there was a movie screen set up and a 16mm projector, and there was Major Mansman, and as I recall, 2 guys in gray suits.
On the screen was the film we had shot. We could see clearly on film the nose cones separate, and then we saw the dummy warhead. And suddenly, into that frame, an object flew in, chasing the warhead and so on at the same speed. It's going between 6,000 and 8,000 miles an hour at that point. And it fired a beam of light at the dummy warhead. The object flew up like this, shot another beam of light at the dummy warhead, went around like this, shot another beam of light at it, went down like this, shot a beam of light like this, and then flew out the same way to come in. At which time, the dummy warhead did this and fell out of the frame.
Florenz Mansman analyzed the film frame by frame with a magnifier, what's called a loop magnifier. And he's on record by the mid-'80s, he was writing to Jacobs in private letters saying, what I saw with the magnifier was a disc-shaped object with a dome. And before each of the 4 flashes of light were observed, the whole disc pivoted, flashed the light, pivoted back, and then pivoted again for the next flash.
The lights came on, and Major Mansman said to me, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks like we got a UFO." And he said, "Lieutenant Jacobs, you are never to speak of this again. It never happened." The 2 guys in the gray suits stood behind him looking at me. He said, "Do I make myself clear?" I said, "Yes, sir. What else are you going to say to the major in charge of you?"
So who were these mysterious men in suits?
Mansman said they were CIA, and they confiscated the film, not a higher Air Force office. CIA confiscated the film.